Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
Well, how are you on this wet and pretty miserable Friday morning? Some other things we're going to be talking about on the programme today is there's no more money in the house retrofitting coffers. So what happens now if you've already started the work? And is the government just paying lip service to protecting the environment? That's something we're going to be talking through this morning. It's a busy weekend in sport as well. So Gavin Whelan will be joining me later to tell you everything that you need to know. And if you have anything on your mind that you want to get off your chest, then you just need to text 083 3333 975. You can use WhatsApp to contact the programme that way, or you can call 051 846 123. Facebook and Twitter also available to you at WLRFM. We're on Twitter, or use the hashtag Déise Today. But first up this morning, if you've been anywhere near those roadworks affecting the Ardkeen, Williamstown area, I'm pretty sure you're tearing your hair out at times. When will they be done, and what's going to happen when the schools reopen? So for the latest update, I'm joined on the line by Fergus Galvin, who's Director of Services with Responsibility for Roads, Water and the Environment with Waterford City and County Council. You're very welcome to the programme, Fergus.
Thanks, Maria.
Now, first of all, this is pipe laying, isn't it?
It is. Just to give people an idea of what's happening there, there's a new natural gas main being laid by Gas Networks Ireland across to service the WUH, the University Hospital Waterford, and it's the scope of the works involves a pipe that comes from, I suppose, the Williamstown road side of the Outer Ring Road all the way across the Outer Ring Road in front of Tesco Ardkeen and on then into the hospital. So that's what's happening at the moment, and that's the reason for the roadworks. And
unfortunately, by that very track that you've just laid out, when it comes to the roundabout just outside us here, there's really no alternative, is there?
There are no alternatives, unfortunately. There is no alternative way, and there's no diversion route. There's no, we're very limited in terms of what we can do in traffic management there. But having said that, we're working with the contractor to ensure that the works will be finished as quickly as possible. If I just take a minute just to outline what's going to happen over the next week or two, just to give people an idea of where it will be and what they might expect. In the overall sense, we're hoping that we'll be that within the next 2 weeks, the majority of these works will be finished and done and dusted before the bulk of the schools go back after the summer holidays. So today, there's work happening, as you've probably seen yourself in the way this morning, in around the Tesco Ardkeen roundabout, and the contractor's hoping that he'll be out of there by this evening. And
that was pretty bad yesterday. Now I have to say
it was, yeah. But it is a very busy roundabout, and there was no option but to dig a trench across the roundabout. It's not the preferred way of doing it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the options there were extremely limited. From next week, then the contract will be going back over on the stretch between Tesco, Ardkeen roundabout and the hospital, and working his way from around the midpoint of that road across into the hospital grounds. Now, as he approaches the hospital, he'll be moving more and more into the grass firs there in front of the Grow GIY HQ, and then around the corner. So as the work goes on next week, it's more and more of it should be off-road, and with as a consequence, minimising traffic disruption there. And the hope is that by the end of next week that he'll have that section finished. After that, then the following week, there's a few days' work then to be done to take it from where it'll be finished today at Tesco Ardkeen roundabout across to the Williamstown Road, Outer Ring Road roundabout there. And the hope is that he'll be out there by coming towards the end of the following week.
Can this work not be done at night? With apologies to the people living in the area, but say, for example, the Tesco roundabout part of it that was so disruptive yesterday, could that not have been done at night when there wouldn't be the volume of traffic?
You wouldn't have the volume of traffic, but anytime we've undertaken light works in the past, we get significant complaints. You are working in a fairly heavily populated residential area. You have Ardkeen Village on one side, you have Eunan Park on the other side. I suppose it's a question, probably not the best way of saying this, but I mean, you're going to create a certain amount of disruption no matter what way you do it. Do you disturb people sleep at night time who are living in the immediate area, or do you live with a certain amount of traffic disruption during the course of the day? It's a choice between those two options, and sometimes it's not an easy choice to make. So it's there's no painless way. I suppose what I'm trying to say is there's no painless way of doing this. But what I am saying is that the contractor's hoping to get out of that roundabout later on this evening, and that at least this probably day is probably the most disruptive day that we'll have on the road. And after that, it'll be back to, I said, some works on the on the other side of it from Tesco roundabout to Ardkeen next week, but they will be becoming more minimal as the week goes on, and then on the following week then back onto across towards the Williamstown road side of it.
Now, we originally heard the 20th of September. They were going to be running to the 20th of September. Has that date been revised down?
There will be some works ongoing for a few weeks yet, but the most disruptive element of the roadworks that would involve, say, traffic management and traffic delays, we'd be hoping would be finished by this day fortnight. And
when the schools are back, and they'll be back pretty shortly,
they'll be back.
Please tell me you're not going to start that work until 10 o'clock in the morning.
No, absolutely. I mean, we'll be working with the contractor to ensure that he'll avoid working in peak times where there's traffic management and traffic disruption required. So we'd be very, very conscious of that, and we'd be looking to, if we do need to, or if the contractor does need to do work around then, to doing it at off-peak times to ensure that we won't get that we won't upset too many people and cause all of the attendant traffic delays that would arise if we did.
Fergus, when it comes to roadworks, are you kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't? Like, everybody wants the work done, but they don't want it to be noisy, and they don't want to be sitting in their cars watching it happen. They just want the road traffic renovations fairy to come down the middle of the night and make it all happen quietly. Are you kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't?
We are, all of the time we are. I mean, we're going through this, and we had quite a significant amount of roadworks in the city centre there back about a month ago in Lombard Street and O'Connell Street, and O'Connell Street in Lombard Street, and down in John Street and other places around the city again, and would have caused a certain disruption. But I mean, we have to these works we have to undertake during the summertime because it's the best time to do them. You have longer days, drier weather most of the time, but not today, obviously.
But technically, you waited till the autumn to start them. I mean, they didn't start till like early August.
Yeah. Again, you're working around contract, and again, this is not our contract, so we don't have a huge amount of control over it. But we had been looking to schedule these works during the summer holiday period, so that it wasn't starting in the middle of September or on the run up to Christmas or some other time that would cause a great deal more disruption.
That's it, though. There's always something, isn't there? Like, there's either some event going to be happening that you're going to disrupt, or it's very difficult to get a window of something that you're not going to intrude on people. Absolutely, yeah. And all we can do is try and work around and ensure that we work with our contractors to manage traffic around those events and try and minimise the disruption. And in most cases, like you're trying to limit disruption maybe to a few days here and there, so that you're not impacting on something that will go on for weeks and weeks on end and causing a major hurdle for people and major disruption to people's lives. And somebody wants to know, could the pipes have been laid in the footpath rather than the road? Well, some of the pipes will be laid, as I said earlier on. The pipes will be laid in the grass verge, and that in some cases it's just not possible to do it. I mean, when you go out to some place like the Outer Ring or the Outer Ring Road in that stretch there, the amount of services that are buried down underneath the footpath, there's sewage, there's drainage, there's water, there's ESB, there's a multiplicity of telecom cables. Like, sometimes it's just not possible to fit more services into the same space, because there has to be separation between all of these services as well. Like, you can't have a gas main running beside an ESB power line, say, for instance. Yeah. There has to be separation distances between all of those services. That's quite. It's a kind of the job you have can be quite difficult at times, I'd say, trying to organise everything like this. It can be. Well, it's not me personally. It's like we have the department. I mean, it's the department, and we have a good team of people here who will work with contractors to try and ensure that we do that these jobs get done as smoothly as possible. Sometimes it doesn't always work. I mean, I'm like with everything, you can hit unanticipated and unexpected events. If you hit a pile of rock or hit some unexpected drainage problem in the middle of a road job, it can upset your timetables and schedules by a number of days or weeks or whatever, So it's not an exact science when you go planning a piece of work like this either. And what time do these particular works finish at during the day? Is it 4 or? I honestly can't answer that question, Maria, because I've said he's not our contractor. He works there up to around 5-6 o'clock in the evening. I've seen him out there on some evenings this week, so it's that kind of time scale that they will work to. Again, they'll work to
the most effective way possible. So they'll have a program for today. They'll work to get that particular phase of the works done by today and get it tidied up and get the road reinstated before they leave the site that night, so the traffic can flow again across the road during the evening, night time, and into the following morning.
Because what I don't really get is that it seems to be okay for motorists to be sitting in their cars, but it's not okay for people living in the area to listen to the work maybe up to 10 o'clock at night or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. But I said that's a judgment call, and it's a judgment call that has to be made. It also has to be said, like, working at night time is less effective and less efficient. Like, you're obviously working with, even where you have good lights and good spotlights and that, you still don't get the outputs, the effectiveness of your work is way down on what it would be during the course of the day when you have full daylight to see, full visibility, and where the guys who are working down in the trenches are not, what's the best way of describing this, where they would have light shadow and whatnot interfering with their work. You could do it at night time, but it may take 30-40% longer than it might during the middle of the day.
And to be fair to the contractors and yourselves and your department, Fergus, somebody's made the very good point on the text line saying some of the problems caused by motorists not using their heads, as in blocking roundabouts and not leaving access to get out of Tesco or allowing people to get through to the Williamstown road, cars bumper to bumper. It's like we're afraid of our lives. We're going to be left sitting there for another 20 minutes. So, like, you're just, pretend I don't even see anyone.
Yeah. That's human nature, and we're probably all guilty of it to some extent, because, I mean, any of us sitting in a car in a traffic jam, sometimes you're afraid to lose your space or your space in the queue or whatever the case may be. But if people have a small little bit of patience, everybody will get through eventually, and not eventually. But
and a bit of courtesy, like, I mean, there are parts of, particularly parts of the Tesco roundabout part where you were always going to miss out unless you were actually on that roundabout, or somebody very kind on the roundabout let you out. The people exiting the Tesco car park were on a hiding to nothing because everybody was going to go, I'm sorry now, but I'm going home. So if just a little bit, if everybody lets one car through, everybody would work better.
Courtesy, a little bit of courtesy to other motorists, and that everything will work out smoothly then in the end. But as I said, the contractor's hoping to be out of there by today anyway, so by later on this evening, so hopefully we won't be having this conversation again. Hopefully
not, and that they won't start when the people are trying to get their kids to school and trying to get to work themselves, and they can start after that, and it mightn't be quite so disruptive, Fergus. Yeah. Thanks very much for talking to me.
Okay, no problem.
See you, bye-bye. Thanks for coming on. That's Fergus Galvin, their Director of Services with responsibility for roads, water and the environment with the Waterford City and County Council. There isn't, I mean, that texter is quite right. A lot of the problem is caused by people just not being courteous and letting somebody out. But I can understand that as well, because you really do think, if I get stuck around here again and I'm stuck sitting at that stop sign for another 20 minutes, I'm going to lose the will to live. So I think I can understand the whole human nature thing, but maybe if we were all a little bit more courteous on the roads, you never know. Let's have your thoughts. 083 3333 975. Do you think the work should be carried out at night? And Fergus said there it's not really that efficient to do it at night. If you were living near the area, would you think to yourself, I'll put up with the noise for a couple of nights just so the work will be done quicker? Or are you thinking, no, I'm trying to get my children to sleep. I'm not listening to those kind of, whatever they are, jackhammers digging up the road and everything at that hour of the night, not having it. It's very difficult trying to make a decision like that, I suppose, trying to please everyone. I don't envy them the job. Anyway, let's have your thoughts. 083 3333 975 051 846 123 is how you get in touch with the programme. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. This texter said, good morning, Maria. I totally agree they should be done at night time, but why did they leave it so late to do if they knew the work needed to be done? Can they not work from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. at night, says somebody else? And as I said earlier on, it's all jolly fine for us, but maybe if you're living in the area, you wouldn't be too impressed with that, listening to the noise of it. Only in Ireland would you get major roadworks carried out during daytime hours, is another texter called Noel, not to mention the length of time it takes. Why didn't they do the roadworks at night at University Hospital Waterford, and Tesco is another texter. And the fact is, day work and nighttime work is far more expensive, says Jim. And I think Fergus sort of alluded to that it's not as efficient to do it at night. But to be fair to them, they seem to be moving along at a cracking pace now. If they're laying pipes and all of that, like it seems to be moving fairly quick. So hopefully the disruption will be reasonably short-lived. But you'd imagine that they would just find another way to it's just unfortunate that one artery there onto that roundabout was so disruptive to everybody yesterday. Now, the state has been told it must delete data held on 3.2 million citizens, which was gathered as part of the rollout of the Public Services Card, as there's no lawful basis for retaining it. Report has been highly critical, and the report into the investigation of the card, highly critical of it, found there's no legal reason to make individuals obtain the card to access state services such as renewing a driving licence or applying for a college grant. TJ McIntyre is chair of Digital Rights Ireland and is on the line now, and he also lectures in law in UCD. You're very welcome to the programme, TJ.
Good morning, Maria.
What's your thoughts on this? Did you kind of see this coming?
The writing has been on the wall for this since at least 2016, and I'm not the only person to have publicly said this. I think at some stage or another, more or less every independent data protection expert in the state has said that this was clearly illegal, and that the Department of Social Welfare was storing up trouble for itself. It's a pity it's taken this long for the report to come out. It's not a final report on all aspects of the Public Services Card, but it is, as you say, they're utterly damning in relation to the issues it does consider.
And is the criticism not of the card itself, but what is done with the data that it collects and how it's deemed to be necessary for other areas where it shouldn't be?
That's right. So there are two issues here. One is, can the department use Public Services Card for its own purposes in relation to social welfare benefits? And that issue isn't dealt with today. The issue that's dealt with today is mostly the question of can other state bodies insist on the Public Services Card? What was happening here for years was it was becoming sort of de facto sort of national identity card where you couldn't get a driving licence, a passport, a college grant, etc. without this. What the BBC has now said, as we were saying all along, is that is clearly and blatantly illegal, and other public bodies must stop immediately looking for a Public Services Card before they'll give you a state benefit.
And that's good news, isn't it? Because some people were wary of it. Were their fears grounded, or is it all a little bit conspiratorial and they're out to get us? Were people who had concerns of it, were their fears grounded?
Oh, their fears were very well grounded. I mean, the fact that the Department of Social Protection has acted in a manner which was clearly and blatantly illegal for several years now demonstrates the sheer lack of care that they show with their personal data. That's been reflected in a lot of areas. As a matter of operational practice, they have had multiple data breaches where you've had insiders selling personal data to private investigators on behalf of insurance companies, for example. But what this they've also had multiple internal breaches where you've had individuals within social protection snooping on family or friends or neighbours, looking up their personal details for no good reason. What this now shows, though, is that the enforcement mechanisms are beginning to catch up with them, and that they will, in future, no longer be able to get away with this.
And what happens now? I mean, the Public Services Card itself is still in existence. Do I still have to have that just to access social welfare? But I don't need it for a passport or a driving licence or all the other things?
You don't need it for a passport, driving licence, etc. That has been knocked on the head as of today. What isn't clear and what we'll wait on the full report and later reports to determine is whether they can insist on it to get other social welfare benefits. I believe the answer to that is that they won't be able to, but we'll have to wait for a full report and the later aspect of this investigation to confirm that.
And should anyone who has one, and there's quite a few, there's millions of people who have one, should they be worried in any way? Because what information would they have on you? Like what that would be that private?
If you were required to take out a PSC, you would have had to submit a lot of supporting documentation to get it. Now, one surprising aspect of today's findings is that the department was illegally holding on to all that supporting information. So what they should have done was, once they had the information confirming, for example, your place of residence, that they should have then shredded it afterwards. They had no business holding on to that information indefinitely thereafter. In fact, they were illegally holding on to it indefinitely. So all of that information must now be shredded. In terms of other people who were forced to get a PSC, to the extent that they were required to do so after May of 2018, when the new data protection law, the GDPR, came into force, it's clear that the relevant state bodies were acting illegally. And what might now happen is the DPC might start issuing fines against those bodies for insisting on handing over, requiring a public services card in circumstances where this was clearly not allowed by the legislation. So we might see fines being issued against, for example, the Department of Foreign Affairs or the other bodies that were insisting on it up until quite recently.
There's a caller on asking about the public service card. She needs to access a welfare application online in the coming days. Will she need to use her public services card still for that? If you have a card, there's no harm in using it, is there?
For the time being, as I understand it, the department is going to be allowed to continue using it for its own internal purposes. But as I say, that might change when later stages of investigation are published.
Just some more reaction coming in to what we're talking about there. TJ John says he has no problem with the government having info on him, like his age and gender, and he thinks this privacy controversy is so over the top. Hasn't the card, excuse me, beg your pardon, hasn't the card helped to crack down on things like social welfare fraud, which is a huge problem in this country, and isn't this a good thing? Like, are we going to be going back to the thing that every time you apply for something now you'll have to be telling them where you live and your address when you've just applied for something maybe 3 to 6 months prior to that?
Well, there's 3 fallacies there I think is worth nailing one by one. First of all, when I hear somebody say, well, I've got nothing to fear, what I usually understand by that is, well, I'm in a sufficiently privileged position. I'm not being discriminated against. I don't have to worry. There's lots of people who aren't in quite a privileged position, and they shouldn't be ignored.
But
so
can you give me an example of that, TJ?
Yeah. So you are somebody who is, for example, a victim of domestic abuse. You move to a new address, and you discover that your abuser has found out your new address through a centralised database like the Public Services Card. And we know of many, many instances of snooping and abuse within social protection already. So that's an example of many people who have concerns. So the fact that John is lucky enough not to be in a position where he has any concerns doesn't mean other people aren't in that position. The second fallacy there that's worth nailing is the idea that this is justified as a fraud prevention measure. In fact, given the costings that we have as to how much this scheme has cost, including the ongoing cost of the investigation into it, maybe the fines will be levied in the end, it's abundantly clear that it has cost significantly more than any conceivable savings. And then the third point I think that comes from that is the question of, can we have administrative convenience? Can we have schemes that allow us to do, for example, things online without having to put in all our supporting documentation each time? And the answer is you can. You can do that, and you can do it in other jurisdictions if you have a properly thought out scheme to begin with. And very often it doesn't involve a sort of one big centralised database. Very often it involves allowing for individual databases in different areas with a degree of interoperability between them, but where that's under the technical control of the individual. So what that means, for example, is you won't have one big database that's vulnerable to hackers, that's vulnerable to internal snoopers, but instead you'll have a range of databases and you will control when information from one can be shared with the other for a particular purpose. So absolutely it can be done. Other European countries have been very good at this. In Ireland, though, the department has willfully refused to learn from their experience. Yeah,
because I think what happens, I think for a lot of people, the the perception that they have is that there's some sinister reason for this public services card. Whereas another one of our listeners, Cllr, made the point that people have no problem putting all their private information online and giving it to companies, supermarket loyalty cards and everything. So what's the difference? But there seems to be a perception among some people that if the government is looking for information on you, then you should be wary because there's something sinister there. And it's like, this national identity card by the back door and all of that. Is that overstated?
I don't think it's remotely overstated. Again, I think there's an underlying fallacy there. So you have one listener to Cllr who says that people have no difficulty publishing this information online. Well, in fact, many people do. Again, the fact that one individual thinks that their experience is representative of the whole population means they might need to reconsider their views. In terms of a difference between the public sector and the private sector, one concern here is that public sector can compel you to get this information by withholding social welfare benefits in a way that the private sector can't. That's something that makes it more worrying. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right when you say this was becoming a national ID card by stealth. And the point is that if the state wishes to introduce national ID cards, the correct way of doing it is by legislation following proper public debate and proper public assessment, not by this really bad faith and ultimately illegal tactic of threatening vulnerable people fundamentally. If you don't apply for the PSC, you won't get your learner's driver's license. You won't get your first passport. You won't get your paternity benefit, and cutting them off from state services that they're entitled to.
And why do people have such an issue with the national identity card? Because they have them in other countries, don't they? Or is it the method that like the lack of consultation, that would you have concerns about a national identity card?
So I think you're right there that the lack of consultation from a procedural point is deeply worrying. Again, this is really a bad faith effort. But in terms of what a national ID card means overall, ID cards are something which have to have a proper purpose behind them. And they're something that are very prone to abuse. And it's not just abuse of a card itself, it's also abuse of the underlying database. So when you talk about a card itself is of little value if you don't require people to use it. It becomes a pretext in some countries for police to stop and harass minorities. So certainly if you're in parts of France or Italy or Austria under their far-right government and you look visibly different, your skin colour is different, then requirements to produce your ID card can be used as a tool to harass you. So, that's one example of problems with the card itself. But the big concern there, again, is this idea of one big underlying database that's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to insiders snooping on it. It's vulnerable to hackers from outside attacking it. It contains biometric details on every individual in the population. One problem with this is that you can't change your biometrics afterwards. You can always change your password if it's been compromised, but you can't go and change your face or your fingerprints afterwards if that information is compromised.
Okay. Somebody wanted to know, can we sue the government for using our data?
Potentially. If you have been required to get a public services card for a service other than welfare after May 2018, then I think you would have a very strong case if it caused you some particular distress or inconvenience, or maybe if you had a service refused you because you didn't have a PSC.
We don't have class actions in this country, am I right there?
That's a really good question. Not in general, no. There's a kind of class action under the new GDPR in that people can nominate a not-for-profit body to bring an action on their behalf. And it's possible that this kind of saga might result in that being done.
OK, we leave it there, TJ. Thanks for talking to me.
Thanks for having me.
See you. Bye-bye. That's TJ McIntyre there, Chair of Digital Rights Ireland and also a lecturer in law in UCD. Let's have your thoughts on that. 083 333 975 051 846 123. Back after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. It's Maria in for Damien, and somebody says everyone in this country has a PPS number, and it should be the only number that you need your whole life. It should be the only number that's used for every government department, be it social social welfare, hospital, driving licence, passport, everything. That way, if something happens to you, all the services have to do is type in your PPS number and your history is there from birth. Sounds like pretty common sense to me. And I don't understand, maybe it happens now, but it certainly didn't happen in the past, why when you died, that the social welfare people weren't instantly the birth register and deaths thing, where that all isn't joined up thinking there, so people can continue to claim for people who are dead because they didn't know they were dead. It's just ridiculous, honest to God. If they sorted the place out, it doesn't take much to sort the place out if they applied a little bit of common sense. Maybe the king of common sense is in the studio with me now. Fianna Fáil City and County Councillor Jason Murphy. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Maria. I'm a little bit out of breath now because I ran from the Farron-Shaneen roundabout. I was listening to Fergus before I came in. And he was explaining this away, and then I was in the Farron-Shaneen roundabout. I said, I'm getting out of this car. I was like Michael Douglas out of falling down. So if someone sees my car outside Mount Pleasant and a lunatic running up in a cheap check shirt, that was me.
Now, the reason that you're in to talk to me is this, and it's annoyed a lot of people because it seems to be a case of, let's do what we can for the environment and let's do this, that and the other for the environment. And then when people try to do that, apparently they've run out of money. This is the home retrofitting grant, which has pretty much been cancelled because there's no more money left for it. In a way I can understand because people are so more environmentally aware.
Yeah.
But what's your thoughts on it?
I suppose this grant was introduced, I think, in 2017 as part of the government's climate action plan. And as part of that plan, they wanted to retrofit, I think, up to 500,000 or 500,000 houses to bring them up from C level of a BR rating, maybe up to A or A+. So this was kind of a flagship grant in relation to the government to allow people to do this. So 21 million was set aside to allow this, and it was put in place for 2 years. And it was a bit of a slow burner. At the start, I suppose, in 2017, I think people took up the grant to the tune of about 4.5 million. And she's laughing because I can't breathe. In 2018, I think it was about 7.5 million. And then in 2019 there was a spike in it, but still we were well underneath the 21 million that was set aside. The closing date for this grant, I believe, was the 19th of July. People applied for this grant and now have been told that the tap is now been turned off. They only found this out last week. And I suppose the crux of this is, it appears that the government knew about this, Richard Bruton knew about this, the Minister responsible for this, and SEEI, who were administering the grants, knew about this back in March. But yet they let people apply for it. And it's not a simple application process. The application process, just to get in the process, would cost about €2,000 to show that you're up for the grant, if you like. And they were told last week that the money is gone. So people had invested huge amounts out of their own savings, and now they've been told it's over, it's gone. My issue with this is, I appreciate it may have been oversubscribed because people are more aware of environmental issues now. But why didn't they tell this back in March? Why didn't they tell people this back in March? They left people apply. The closing date, like I said, it was the 19th of July. And then they've been told last week that the game is up. Now, that's okay. And I suppose if people apply for a grant, you might say to people listening, that's your own business. And if you don't qualify, you don't qualify. But to get into this grant, you have to engage in a huge amount of preliminary works in your home. It's a very substantial grant. It allows people to claim back up to half the outlay, I think, in a deep retrofit. And what a deep retrofit is, it's new windows, new doors, underfloor heating, wall insulation, roof insulation, new heating system. So it's a huge financial outlay, and you have to show, if you want to engage in this, that you're up for this. So you have to make a huge investment, a preliminary investment, before you can even apply for this. So people are out of pocket. It's up to €2,000 to even apply for it, and it's very unwieldy application process. It takes up to 14 weeks to know if you've been approved for the grant or not.
Sorry, just clarify for me, it costs about $2,000 to apply for it in the first place.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have had work done on your house.
No, you don't. Okay. But you have to show an intention of carrying out that work. So you have to obviously engage a contractor in the work. You have to get quotations. You have to probably replace your windows, replace your doors before you'll qualify for this grant. So people are halfway through work and they've applied for this grant in good faith, and they've been told now that the tap has been turned off. Like I said at the start, under the government's action plan, I think they're aiming at 500,000 houses to be retrofitted in the next decade. And instead of probably turning off the tap on grants, they should be increasing grants. We only found this out last week. But apparently Minister Richard Bruton knew this back in March. The SEI knew it back in March. But for whatever reason, they didn't relay this to the public, and people kept applying for the grants because the closing date, like I said, was the 9th of July. And I suppose, being a bit cynical about this, you'd have to wonder, I suppose, with the local elections that were in the pipeline back in May and the European elections, was this information held back and then released last week to have the least impact it would electorally on the government? You'd have to wonder.
But I'm sure they'd say, no, we didn't do anything of the kind. But what's going to happen now? Because if you want people to be more environmentally friendly, you can't have the wind blowing through their houses because their windows are hanging off and the heat going out the roof because the insulation isn't right. Either we're into this environmental thing or we're not.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the point I'd have. Either the government put their money where their mouth is, and I think in relation to this and the actions they've taken in relation to this, I think they've probably been penny wise and pound stupid in relation to what they've done here in turning off the tap for people that are halfway through this process and now find out that the funding is turned off. Because, like I said, to engage in a deep retrofit, you're talking about up to €100,000, and this grant was available for up to 50% of that. So people have budgets for that, so they're left hugely out of pocket. At the very least, they're left out by the 2,000 that it costs to engage in this grant, and at the very most, God knows why, God knows how much. And like you said, Maria, either we're serious about climate action change or we're not. I mean, there's a lot of lip service been paid to this, and this was launched to great fanfare back in 2017. It was said it was a pilot scheme, and that's fair enough. But it was said it would run till the end of 2019, and it's been cut short. And like I said, 21 million was set aside. I don't know if they got to the 21 million or not, but they knew in March that they were going to cut this short, and they didn't let anyone know. So people are out of pocket because nobody was left known.
Okay, hold on there for a second, because I need to take a break. Of something else to ask you about. 083 333 975 for your texts, or you can call 051 846 123. I'll be back with Jason after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
You are welcome back to the programme. I still have Jason Murphy, Fianna Fáil City and County Councillor, with him, because I wanted to ask you, we were talking about this yesterday. I was talking to Councillor John Cummins, and this decision to refuse planning permission for the Cllr solar farm.
Yeah.
That seems to have broadsided everybody.
I think so, and I have to say I've probably been 100% agreement with my colleague John Cummins. I was listening to it yesterday morning in the car. I couldn't believe it because, as you know, this is a huge development out in Cllr. I think up to 800 houses, affordable, social and private, and all the ancillary services that goes with that. And this was going to be a flagship development in relation to being environmentally friendly. And a key part of this was the, I think, 20-acre solar farm. We were, led to believe that Waterford City and County Council were supportive of this. So I have to say I was taken aback and broadsided that it was refused. And I was listening to John yesterday, and I looked at the refusal, and I know it was refused. It was refused because the area is zoned open space. But where I found this slightly unusual or fascinating, if you like, when the developer would have engaged with the planning authority, Waterford City and County Council, I would have imagining that Waterford City and County Council would have pointed this out straight away, that the area they want to develop the solar farm is zoned open space, and would have recommended that it would have gone for what's termed a material contravention. I suppose that's just words to listeners, but councillors are not involved in the planning process, but they are involved at a material contravention level, which basically means something that is not in line with the county plan can be changed or amended. So if this area was zoned open space, it could come before the council. The planning authority would make an argument that it would be rezoned, and the council as a collective would take on board the arguments and then would make a decision, would it be rezoned or not. This never came before us. We were led to believe that the council, the planning authority and the council was in favour of this. It never came before us. I would be totally in favour of it, the solar farm, because it's a key part of the whole development out there in the Cllr plan. Like I said, up to 800 new homes. That would be a flagship of green energy and renewable, and the people who potentially want to move into these homes were led to believe that their bills would be neutral or low or very near neutral, because they would be buying into what's called a community power initiative, where they would feed into the national grid.
This is what I don't get, Jason. Like, you're a councillor, there's planning in the council, there's a common word here, which is the council.
Yeah.
The city or county, doesn't matter. There's a common word. When everybody was being so positive about this, did nobody think to send out an email to y'all going, lads, could you just tone down the positivity there, because this is zoned as an open space, and we might run into difficulty with it, so let's not be overly
Because when
positive.
I heard this 3 or 4 days ago, as you do, I googled it and looked back at the media commentary at the time this was announced, which was again entirely positive, and they were quoting sources within Waterford City and County Council. But I'd like to say
did anyone hold up a red flag and go, there might be a zoning issue now, so hold your horses?
No, because, Maria, as I said at the start, councillors are not involved in planning, and for good reason. We know all about planning and what happened in the early 90s and during the boom, so we're not involved in specific planning issues. But I would have imagined, and we don't engage in that, because if we did, there'd be all kinds of ethical questions being asked. But I would have imagined that the planning department would have looked at this and seen that it was zoned open space, and recommended that the developer and with the planning department would have brought this to Waterford City and County Council and asked for a material contravention to see that the zoning would have been changed. And I would imagine, not preempting what the rest of the council would have thinking, that given our present, in relation to environmental issues, that it would have been rezoned. So I'm very disappointed with that. But having said that, it is open to the developer to re-engage with the planning authority, and I hope they will do, and I hope it will come to material contravention.
Okay, so it's not over yet?
No, not by any means. Okay,
Jason, thanks very much for coming in and abandoning your car and arriving here out of breath just to get to come in and talk to me, so I appreciate that. That is Jason Murphy, Fianna Fáil City and County Councillor.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
You are welcome back to the programme. Paul from Waterford in Your Pocket says it brings to mind, this is the whole public services card, it brings to mind Cambridge Analytica. We as users can do our best when it comes to protecting our information, but when there is no oversight or transparency from government, we are in trouble. Somebody else says, I tried to open a savings account recently and they looked for my PPS card. I don't know if you didn't have one, but you can go back to them now and go, I don't need that anymore, because you never needed it in the first place, apparently. What I find unsettling is the fact the government has so much information on us, the public, yet the electoral register is an absolute shambles, says Councillor Pat Fitzgerald. And I suppose that's kind of the thing that I'm talking about, that, surely why are people who have moved away, why isn't the information that we have collated in some way, so that when you die, that's everybody who needs to be notified is notified. There's a lady texted in earlier on, or called in earlier on, say her husband died years ago. The bank is still sending letters to him. It's pure nonsense that we can't keep track of who's alive, who's dead, who's living where in this world particularly. Anyway, plenty more coming up in the next hour of the programme for you, but now it's time for the news at 11 with Judy.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
Now, according to an international study, the rate of underage drinking in Ireland has fallen over 4 years. The study found the number of 15 and 16-year-olds drinking alcohol fell from 50% in 2011 to 35% in 2015. And, it sounds like good news. Drinking habits in 63 countries, with consumption falling in over 2/3 of them. And that all sounds like good news, but not everybody is kind of falling for it, if you like. Eunan McKinney is Head of Communications and Advocacy with Alcohol Action Ireland. You're very welcome to the programme, Eunan.
Maura Maria, thank you for having me on.
No problem, thanks for coming on. Now, you don't think it's quite as it's being spun in quite a positive way, as if it's normal for 50% of 15 to 16-year-olds being drunk?
Yeah, I think what this report, your listeners would be probably interested to know that the authors of this report is actually the alcohol industry itself. And what they're endeavouring to do here is trying to normalise the fact that, you know, we have such a high level of children drinking alcohol, not only throughout the world, but in Ireland in particular. And, you know, we have to bear in mind that there's no safe limit for children to be drinking alcohol. And whilst there has been a reduction in the years that they have identified, you know, the data is 4 or 5 years old in that instance. And we would welcome, of course, if there was a reduction in relation to the level of children drinking. But we still exist in a society whereby, you know, nearly 10% of 11-year-olds will begin drinking in Ireland. That's 6,500 11-year-olds. Just think about that.
That's quite shocking, isn't it? Like, you know, 15 to 16-year-olds, okay, you're on the cusp of, you know, being able to legally drink, shall we say. But 11-year-olds, you're an absolute child.
The real source of the data in relation to this, which will actually be published later this year, is the Irish Health Behaviours in School-Age Children, which euphemistically known as the HBSC, and it will actually give us really, really clear insight into those cohorts of 10 to 11-year-olds, 12 to 14-year-olds, and 15 to 17-year-olds. Now, in that sense, you know, we know that children of the levels of 15, you know, have experienced alcohol in the last 30 days. That tips nearly 50% in the last survey, and in levels of been really drunk, quote, really drunk, we know that 40% of 15-year-olds have been really drunk in their lives. That's 27,000 kids in Ireland today. So, like, these are shocking figures, and what this report is endeavouring to do is to try and normalise for people this level that it's okay that children will be drinking. What we're saying is it's not okay. We shouldn't be normalising this in any sense. And in addition to that, what they seek to do in the report, which I think is really disingenuous, is to seek to blame children about their behaviour. They seek to blame children in relation to perhaps their background, their parents, their peers, worse again, their character. And these are all camouflage activities by the drinks industry to shift the blame from their peddling of alcohol, their sale of alcohol to children, the promotion of alcohol to children, rather than identifying, you know, trying to blame children in relation to perhaps some flaw in their character.
How do they promote it to children, though?
Through marketing.
But none of the ads are marketed at children. They're just marketed in a cool way, but they're not marketed at children.
Well, do we think that you know, a 17-year-old who tips over into 18, who joins Europe's leading cohort of binge drinkers, somehow becomes aware of alcohol on their 18th birthday? I mean, the reality is that alcohol is ubiquitous throughout Irish society. It is promoted to the tune of around 2 million spent on the promotion of alcohol in Ireland every week. Children are impacted by this. In particular, children are impacted by the level of alcohol sponsorship in sport. They see it every day associated with success, with athleticism, with emotion and joy and all of these things. So, and if they go into any supermarket or any retail experience, they're going to come across alcohol throughout their entire experience in those stores. They'll watch soap programs at 6:30 in the afternoon or in the evening where alcohol is product placed within programs. Like, these are all huge influences on children as they grow up in our society.
But so can you lay
the idea that we wouldn't be blaming, the idea that we would be blaming children for some sense of a flaw in their character and not identifying the fact that marketing and alcohol is promoted so ubiquitously in Ireland seems to me to be disingenuous.
But is it not like a multi-strand thing, really, in that I strongly suspect, and I am a non-drinker, and I strongly suspect that if you banned all advertising, all sponsorship, all anything to do with alcohol in this country, it wouldn't affect sales at all, because Irish people like to drink?
Oh no, I would disagree with you entirely there. I mean, the main drivers of alcohol consumption in Ireland are price and promotion, and in that context, you know, the fact that alcohol is so available at such a cheap price and the fact that it is promoted so heavily throughout all strands of society is what drives the actual culture around alcohol. You know, we talk about Ireland having a culture around alcohol, but in actual fact, that culture is largely fabricated by the advertising and the promotion of alcohol in Ireland. I think that this idea that we have, that we're somehow innately or inherently, attracted to alcohol because we're Irish is just a complete euphemism for, not really taking.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying it's in our DNA or anything, but I think, if people, you'd still see people heading off on their holidays or a flight at 6 o'clock in the morning with a picture of a pint in front of them. We just associate everything in this country, every celebration, every family occasion, every confirmations, communion, they're all associated with us gathering together and drinking. It's a pastime in this country. People go drinking. They don't just have a drink on the side as they go and play tennis. I
completely agree with you. There's no question about it. From the cradle to the grave, alcohol is a river that runs through all of our celebrations. But one of the reasons we're doing that is because it is promoted to us in such a manner. We weren't always like that. If you go back to 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you can see that the level of consumption of alcohol has doubled. We drink twice as much as global averages. Now, we don't do that because we're somehow, have an insatiable thirst for alcohol. We do that because it is heavily promoted to us. Mm. It is heavily promoted. It is sold to us on an absolute minute-by-minute, day-by-day basis. And that is what is driving this insatiable need for the consumption of alcohol in Ireland. And we have to get to a point whereby we curb some of these matters. And this is what the Public Health Alcohol Act has endeavoured to do. It has endeavoured to put in place a whole set of measures which will seek to curb the level of consumption and the demand for alcohol. But unfortunately, we haven't moved to actually put some of these measures into operation. And until such time as we do, we will continue to see this level of alcohol consumption and the levels as high as they are.
OK, we leave it there, Eunan. Thanks very much for talking to me this morning.
Thanks very much.
See you, bye-bye. That's Eunan McKinney there, Head of Communications and Advocacy with Alcohol Action Ireland. Let's have your thoughts on that. If there was no, am I right in saying that, and I think Eunan agreed with me, that we are everything to do with any celebration, any family event, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with people getting together and having a few drinks. But if alcohol advertising was banned, if the promotion of alcohol was banned, do you think that suddenly, within a few years, we'd all be going around to each other's houses for a cup of tea or something? Or do you just think it's so much a part of the fabric of Irish life in terms of what you do when you celebrate? You go down to the pub, have a drink, people coming round, you have a few glasses of wine, you get home from work because you're exhausted and you're stressed, and it's so much a part that I don't think it needs advertising to us at all. I think everybody would find their way to it because it's so much a part of the fabric of life. Or am I wrong? Let me know. 083 3333 975. That is how you get in touch with the programme. You can use WhatsApp if you want, or you can call 051 846 123, and I'll be back with more for you after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme on the subject of the public services card. This texter said, I see no harm in having a public ID card. The state has the right to know as much as they need to know about its citizens. It will serve the people in lots of ways, i.e. security and fraud. I have one myself, says the texter. On the subject of alcohol, I love how this is put. Hi Maria, I'm 60 years old, non-drinker. Way back before that, very little advertising about alcohol, but my family would drink it out of a dirty sock. That is just an expression and a half. Alcohol is a business, says Barry. Simple as that. Companies don't care about the consequences, only about profits. And somebody else says, Maria, the biggest mistake was selling drink in the supermarket. It made it easier that I'm right about the drink. But the thing about advertising is coffee is advertised a lot. And it's very cool, and you have all these super trendy coffees, and they look magnificent and they look fantastic. I wouldn't take one for free off you. I just don't like it. They can advertise it to me all they like. I don't don't like it. So I'm not really buying into the whole advertising thing that people go, oh, I must try that because it's been advertised and it looks very cool. I think people are a little bit more savvy than that, and I think we just like drinking in this country, and it's advertised or not, it doesn't matter a damn whether it is or not. That would be my opinion. But you can have your say by texting 083 33 975. How influential is the advertising part of it? I'd be curious to know from you this morning. You can also call 051 846 123. Now, Marc O'Cathsaigh, Green Party councillor for Waterford, is in studio with me. You're very welcome back to the programme, Marc.
Thanks very much, Maria.
The reason that I'm talking to you, we're having quite a green moment, but it's not working out really well, which I'll come to you in a minute about. But the reason that you came in is about the electric cars. Yeah. And here we are again with the government going, this will be grand and we'll give you a grant to help you be more environmentally aware and everything. And now everybody is so environmentally aware that all these environmentally aware things are being oversubscribed.
Yeah, and it refers back as well, I suppose, to the story I heard you discussing with Councillor Murphy before the break. And it's a repeat. It's a repeat scenario. So the current initiative that's there to incentivise electric car use, under a government spending review that was put out this morning, it looks like that's about to run out of money in 2021. And when you consider it's a Project Ireland 2040 fund, we're supposed to be looking 20 years into the future. It looks like under current growth, that fund is going to be depleted by 2021, and we have to wonder whether electric car users are going to end up in the same kind of bind as people who are trying to deep retrofit their homes, with all their research done, with the investment made and all the rest of it, to be left in the lurch because the money has run out, the well has run dry. There's a wider consideration around how the climate action plan that the government has invested this whole strategy so heavily in electric vehicles. The huge snarl up that's on the Farransheen Road
would just be quieter if we all had electric cars.
It would just be quieter, and it would still be there. So there's huge store being put by electric vehicles. But they're not the silver bullet. I've said that this many times in WLR. That electric vehicles, a traffic jam with an electric car looks the exact same, except, as you say, quieter. One of the other issues that's here, and I just looked through the government spending review this morning, and they reckon that the electric vehicle purchaser gets a direct subsidy from the state of €13,616 on average. So when somebody goes in to buy an electric car, the state is transferring 13.5 grand to this person. So it's really only the well-off people who can avail of that. We've spoken before about the fact I don't drive an electric car because I can't afford one. Investing and making huge investment in an electric car, that doesn't reach people who are on a lower socioeconomic background, on lower incomes. It doesn't help people who are reliant on public transport. It doesn't help people who mightn't be able to drive because of disability or old age or children. It's only aimed at helping one particular segment of society. So it looks like the funding that's there is about to run out. It looks like another example of underfunding.
You almost sound like you think that's just as well.
No, that's not true. But what we need is, just like with the deep retrofit scheme, we can't have one scheme in place and then to pull the rug. One of the huge problems with the lack of funding in the deep retrofit scheme is all of the contractors have upskilled their workers, taken on workers, have expanded their ability to do these deep retrofits, and now bang, the market for deep retrofits is gone. They reckon, OK, we'll move from pilot scheme to a full scheme, but it'll take us 2 years. What's a building contractor supposed to do with his trained staff in those 2 years? It knocks all of the confidence out of the market. Myself and Councillor Jody Power, we had a stakeholders meeting earlier in the summer where we talked to different people, but we talked to people from the motoring industry. And they were talking about just this issue, about the confidence that people have in terms of buying an electric vehicle. And I know I've discussed with you before the real problem around electric vehicles. OK, the price point is there, but the charging infrastructure is terrible. So we're talking about trying to put 840,000 of these things on the road. In Tramore, we have 5 charging points at the moment. There's a population of 10,000 people. So a lot of people's decisions around buying electric cars, yes, the price point is important. The model of car that's available is also very important to people. But one of the huge barriers is the charging infrastructure and people's range anxiety, the fact that people aren't confident that they're going to drive down to Kenmare for a bit of a holiday and get there on a charge. So there has to be continuity. When you start to fund a project, if you want confidence in it, there has to be continuity of funding. But I do have questions about whether this is a good way to spend money in order to tackle our emissions, which is what our target is supposed to be. And actually, the government's own spending report has raised those issues in terms of bang for your buck, in terms of tackling emissions from your transport sector. It's not a slam dunk that electric vehicles is the best way to spend that money.
Would it not be a better idea, because I'm presuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I'm presuming that any houses that are being built now will never need to be retrofitted because they're all being built in an environmentally friendly way. So this, in terms of the houses, this is a short-term thing. It's only houses that are already built. Maybe they need to be retrofitted. Going forward, that shouldn't be. No house should ever have to be, altered so that a disabled person can live in it. They should be built like that in the first place, and then you wouldn't need to be, I need a grant to get a bathroom for my Uncle John or to come to live with us. You wouldn't need any of that because all the houses built would be accessible to everybody from the get-go. They would be environmentally friendly from the get-go. So we're dealing with houses that are being built up to what, 10, 20 years ago or whatever?
10, 20 years ago, but a lot of our housing stock is older than that. The average energy rating across all of the housing stock in Ireland is E1. And so to kind of give you, without the figures in front of you, but to kind of give you a rough price point, and I can talk about this from our own house, that we didn't do a deep retrofit, but we did upgrade. So we started at an E1, which this was a 1970s bungalow, a kind of fairly standard housing estate bungalow. And so we took it from an E1 and we managed to bring it up to a C1. And now that means that the cost for us to run the house in terms of energy is about $2,500 less per year. Deep retrofits would bring that up higher again, up to an A rating. So you're talking about going from the E-rated home took in or around 5,000 to run per year. If that was A-rated, it would bring me under 1,000. It's a really, really good way to spend money because people then year on year will be getting savings of. In the case of
it's a really, really good way of spending money if you have money to contribute towards the work in the first place, and isn't that the problem?
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's a really good way for the government to spend money, because the return on that investment is very good, and the return on that investment goes on for a very long time because people are saving that year on year, and you can be quite sure with taxation and all the rest of it, whatever money you and I send, the government will, whatever money we save, the government will get a bite of that cherry at some point, and we won't escape scot-free, but it's a good way to spend money in terms of helping people to reduce their carbon emissions, but also for them to tackle things like fuel poverty. So again, it goes back to a social issue. A lot of the people who are living in older housing with very poor energy ratings are the people on the lower income. And these are the people who are experiencing fuel poverty, the people in very old council homes who are lighting open fires, and all the benefit of that coal is going straight up the chimney. They can't keep their house warm. So investing in something like deep retrofitting, in comparison to investing in electric vehicles, which seems to be disproportionately improving a lot of people who are already fairly wealthy. If you start investing in deep retrofit of homes, and particularly social housing or old council stock, that is actually going to affect the people in the lowest income bands in society more. It's going to tackle things like fuel poverty and things like that. Also, to kind of come back to that and on the same theme, if we are investing heavily in public transport rather than electric vehicles, again, the people who are going to benefit are the people in that lower socioeconomic band, the lower income band. They're the people who derive most benefit from improved pedestrian facilities, improved cycling facilities, and improved public transport. So when we come to spending this money or making the changes that we need to move to a low carbon society, I think there has to be an element of social justice attached to it. We call it a just transition in the Green Party. It's not just a case of where are we going to spend the money. It's also what's the social benefit that's going to be derived from it. I don't think spending all of our money on electric vehicles is, from a social justice point of view, the best way to go. I'd prefer to see that money invested in public transport, pedestrian facilities, cycling facilities, and deep retrofitting of houses.
But is the government not just being realistic and going, there's no point in us putting all this money and helping people to get the bus? They want to drive cars, so we have to, we're in the business of getting elected and keeping our jobs, so thereby we will make it as environmentally friendly as we can for them to continue to drive their cars. And then when everybody has an electric car, then we can start charging the same amount that we used to charge for the petrol and the diesel and get the money back in the coffers.
I don't agree that the people who are sat in traffic on the Dunmore Road every single day are sat in those cars because that's more fun to do. Sitting in traffic is absolutely horrible.
It's not much fun standing at a bus stop in the piss and rain.
No, it absolutely isn't. So you improve. That's it. You improve the bus stops. You improve the frequency so that the Dutch model, they tried to get the frequency to 8 minutes, so that if you're stood at a bus stop, you're only stood there for 2-3 minutes. You're onto effective, low-cost public transport that gets you where you want to go. I've been day tripping with my boys because I'm on summer break at the moment. And trying to make those type of right decisions. We went up to Kilkenny on the train to have a wander around Kilkenny Castle and all the rest of it. But to take the train up there with my two fellas, that cost me €23, plus I had $4.50 of the parking in the train station. So even though we wanted to use the train, it was part of the day out, Even though we wanted to use the train, it was actually much more expensive than had I just jumped into my diesel car, driven up to Kilkenny and availed of €2 all day parking up there. So I don't agree that people necessarily want to be in their cars all the time. If you look at other countries where they've invested really heavily in public realm, the Netherlands is a perfect example. Something like 60% of their short journeys is taken by bike. So people don't necessarily want to jump into their cars to drive down for the pint of milk. It's just maybe they feel that that's safer. Maybe that's their default option because we haven't invested money in those modes of transport.
So you think I'd get the bus to go down and get a pint of milk?
I take my bike to go down and get a pint of milk all the time. Well, it's only down the road, and in I jump. I use my bike. Now, I'm the queer fella in the cargo bike. I use my bike to get to work every day, and I have one of these bikes that have a box on the front. So my poor 3 children who aren't aware of the social stigma that will attach in the future, they think it's great to jump up into the front of the bike and off we go. So I use the bicycle all the time around Tramore. Tramore is actually a very cyclable town. It's a small town. Everything's within reach. From my house, everything's within a 2-kilometre radius. So yeah, I use it all the time, and I use it because it's handier than the car. If I'm popping down to the Seagull Bakery to pick up my sourdough loaf, because Green Party sourdough loaf and all the rest of it, I jump up on my bike because I can throw my bike up against the side of the shop and walk in. If I try to drive down, I'm trying to park in the Grand Hotel, and it's an absolute palaver. So you make these things. My philosophy is what you're trying to do is you try to make the good choices the easy choice for people to make. OK, we leave it there, Mark. Thanks very much for talking to me. That's Marc O'Cathsaigh there, the Green Party councillor for Waterford, who's based in Tramore. I'll be back with more for you after these.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's. Did you know you can collect your Blue Club points online? See mulliganspharmacy.com.
You are welcome back to the programme. I was saying earlier on that advertising doesn't really, if there was no advertising for alcohol in this country, people would still drink. And somebody called Mick texted in to say, if you think advertising doesn't affect the sale of alcohol, then why are drinks companies spending so much on advertising? They're spending so much on advertising because they want you to drink their brand of alcohol. But gin is gin, whiskey's whiskey, brandy's brandy, but they want you to drink their particular brand. But I don't think if the ad said, drink alcohol, it's cool, and they took that ad away, that all the Irish people would never drink again. It's just a sociable thing to do, and people enjoy it in this country. And all the advertising does is make you think that a particular type of drink is cool. Now, a new philosophy known as gentle parenting bans words like naughty, even when the youngsters are running riot around the place. And is it enlightened, or is it just creating a generation of tiny terrors? That's the question that I have this morning to ask. And I have Laura Erskine on the line. You're very welcome to the programme, Laura.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. My terrors are currently parked to the television while I do this interview. Like many other mums during the school holidays who need to find 5 minutes to get a job done. But that's okay, because they've been in camp all week, running around in the fresh air from for 6 hours a day. So today's the day off.
You're the spokesperson for... Sorry, Laura, you're the spokesperson, just to introduce you properly, you're the spokesperson for mummypages.ie. When your children need a good talking to, do you give them a good talking to?
You know, I have done out of pure frustration, and usually that is a reflection on me rather than necessarily their behaviour, and it doesn't improve things. I suppose through my role as spokesperson for Mummy Pages, I've access to so much parenting advice. And while I can certainly talk the talk, I can't always walk the walk because I'm human. And, we all reach the end of our tether. But I have to say that of all the advice around parenting and the different approaches, the gentle parenting approach or the time in approach definitely works better. And when I can gather myself to actually put that into practice, it definitely is more effective. It's just sometimes difficult to do in the moment, and I suppose we all need little strategies to help ourselves collect our thoughts and actually think about why it is our children are misbehaving. And there usually is a reason. It's not the behaviour that is the problem. It's the issue that's behind it. And I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 7-month-old. Obviously, the 7-month-old is as good as gold. But I've had my fair share of trials and tribulations with the other two. And definitely when I take the time to think about why I'm getting the back chat, why I'm having there's a tantrum in the supermarket, it's generally down to something related to tiredness, to boredom, to the fact that they haven't eaten recently, and there's definitely always something behind it. And actually, lots of parenting experts talk about needing to fill up your child's tank, much like you do a car with fuel. And Joanna Fortune, the very well-known child psychologist here in Ireland, she has a great book called 15-Minute Parenting, and it's actually about spending just 15 minutes of really quality, uninterrupted time with your children in order to fill up their tank and give them that one-to-one connection that they so desperately need. And actually, you'll see over the following days, after putting that into practice on a consistent basis, you'll see their behaviour improving.
But I'd say, Laura, most of the people listening to this programme grew up knowing the look. You either got it from your mother or your father, depending on which was the disciplinarian in the house. But you knew the look. She didn't have to say anything. She just looked at you in that way, and you knew you were acting the maggot and you had to stop. Like, nobody sat me down and went, "Now, Maria, that's very bold. You shouldn't be jumping on the guests when they come in the house." Do you see the point I'm trying to make? That if you have to, that somebody needs to be, there needs to be a boundary that you know that you've done enough, like for your mother to get impatient or your father to get impatient, for somebody to just go, "That's enough is enough now. You've just overstepped the mark," rather than going, "You've really overstepped the mark now, and I want you to think about what you've done." That there's no harm in your parents showing a bit of impatience with you. It's part of teaching them about life.
It is, absolutely, and gentle parenting is actually not about not having boundaries. It most definitely is about having that. I suppose it's just the approach to discipline, and it's reminding yourself that your child's behaviour is a way of letting you know how they're feeling in the only way that sometimes they know how, because they can't regulate their emotions, and they're looking for you to help them to I suppose, co-regulate with them. So you getting more frustrated is actually with them or shouting at them is something that's going to send them into a spiral, because they're looking for you to bring them back down from where their heightened emotion state is, rather than exacerbate it. And that's a very difficult thing as a parent to do. And I remember reading once from a parenting expert in the US how the 1-2-3 method often works. And it's like that look that we all got as children, where your children know that they've pushed too far when you start counting. And I've definitely done that with my children. However, it requires me to count to at least 7 before I can regulate my own emotions and actually then think about how I want to talk to them and deal with the situation. But they definitely know when I start counting that things have been difficult, but I don't have to raise my voice. And it's something that I try and put into practice on a regular basis. However, we all get frustrated. I, as a child, my mother used the wooden spoon, and sometimes she practically used it, sometimes it was the threat of it.
Yeah.
And certainly, that put me in my place in terms of knowing when I'd crossed the boundary. However, it's something that you're ruling them through fear rather than through understanding. And as parents, what we want our children to do is actually to want to be better humans, to understand how disruptive their behaviour is so they don't repeat it again rather than not repeating it out of fear.
But that would be fine if they lived in the bubble of their family home for the rest of their lives. But they're not. They go to school and maybe the teacher isn't a gentle parent, or they go down the local shop and the local shopkeeper says, get away from that, or, it's somebody just cranky people. And they have had no real experience of that. Are they not devastated when somebody then is how they would maybe perceive it as mean to them if they haven't been exposed to a little bit of like impatience or a little bit of, do you know what I mean?
I do, absolutely. And I suppose I know the teachers are complaining about how parenting strategies have changed and how they're feeling the effect in the classroom with more unruly children than ever before, and which is making their life definitely harder. I actually think as parents we all need more help because we've got so much access to information now that we've got our point of reference as to how we were raised as children, and we take what we like and what we didn't like about that and put that into practice. And then after that, we've got all of this parenting advice that can be sometimes conflicting and often confusing. And I know the HSE has brought out a new website called mychild.ie where they're actually desperately trying to help parents to navigate all of the different developmental stages and actually teach us how our children's brains work and why sometimes you can't rationalise with a 3-year-old, and how to help them, I suppose, develop those skills over time. It's something that I think we all struggle with, and definitely we all at times blow our fuse at our children, and we can't feel guilty for that too because we are all human. I suppose if we were to try and do our best, it's about remembering three C's, which is around connection, in that most behavioural problems stem from a child feeling disconnected for some reason, whether that's something that they haven't spent time with their parent much during the day, whether there's a new sibling arriving, whether they're anxious about starting back to school, whether they've had an issue with a friend earlier in the day, or it could be around communication. Parents need to understand that all behaviour is communication, and so we need to figure out what it is their child is trying to communicate. Is it that they're just simply overwhelmed and that's why they're throwing the tantrum, or because they're tired or hungry? And then consistency, as difficult as it is, we can, especially during the summer holidays, we can let our rules go lax a little bit, or when you're tired or fed up, like you can put the children in front of the television for a little longer than usual, and so the rules slip, the rules around treats slip, the rules around behaviour slips, and then suddenly children don't know where they stand, and children need rules. They need that boundary and consistency to really understand where they stand within the family, and so that they can learn what is appropriate behaviour.
But if teachers have highlighted this and we have to come up with strategies, are we not complicating something that really isn't that difficult? 99% of parents are reasonable people who might throw the head every now and then, but then you hug the child and you make the child feel loved and it's all forgotten. Are we not complicating things ridiculously?
I don't think so. I think you're right in that we do hug the child, and sometimes that's to make us feel better as much as it is for them. And hugs are so important. That physical connection is so important, and something that maybe we don't do often enough throughout the day, except for at bedtime. And it is about that connection. I do think that parenting is very difficult, and navigating that while navigating work and other stresses that might surround us as parents, and maybe having to mind older parents and other members of the family. It's something that's very difficult. Parenting isn't complicated, but having rules is something that's really important. And reward charts, behavioural charts are something that is definitely something that helps to keep the children on track as much as it does the parents. And indeed, I'm trying to teach my children some little bit of independence over these summer holidays, and they have a whole set of chore charts.
Okay. Laura, lovely talking to you as always. Thanks very much for talking to me. That is Laura Erskine, spokesperson for parenting website mummypages.ie there.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com. Life's a beach with Mulligan's Pharmacies. Open late on the Dunmore Road and Intramore.
You are welcome back to the programme. Gavin Whelan is in studio with me now to talk sport. Well, Gavin, Kilkenny or Tip?
Well, that is the big question, Maria. I might have to sit in defence and call it a draw, as some people are doing, but yeah, it's going to be intriguing. I suppose we were just getting used to the fact that All-Ireland Hurling final now in the third week in August, so used to the first Sunday in September, which is going to be the football, as has been the case the last 2 years. So look, you have to say, first of all, the two best teams are contesting the final. Would we have said at the start of the year Kilkenny would make this stage? Probably not, but a team under Brian Cody, and they've really gained huge momentum, and their semi-final victory over Limerick I think will rank as one of his greatest ever wins. They come with huge momentum, they come with great pedigree, and like guys like TJ Reid, and these guys are really on top of their game at the minute. I think they're going to bring a massive intensity to it, but I think Tip are well capable of matching that as well. I think Liam Sheedy is back in there for a reason, and that's to try and wrestle back the Liam McCarthy Cup. Tip beat Kilkenny, he beat Brian Cody in 2010 to stop Kilkenny going for 5 in a row. I'm sure that's in the back of Brian Cody's mind as well, and they'll be using that as a motivational factor. Tip probably with the best, maybe better forwards for me, the likes of Callan, Bubbles, these guys, the Mars in the half back line. I think that middle third is going to be a crucial sector. Killian Buckley, it'll be interesting to see whether he features for Kilkenny, whether Richie Hogan gets the nod. There's news coming through that he has a little bit of a knee injury, so both sets of teams will be revealed tonight, so I think you'll probably have more of an idea then, but based on maybe, I think Tip might have a little bit more forward power. I'll give them a slight nod. We'll see how wrong I am. I got the two semi-final predictions wrong, because I actually thought it was going to be a Limerick-Wexford final, so I'm not very good in their predictions this year. But I just think maybe if Tip get that quality ball into the McGraths and Bubbles and these guys, Callan, he scored a goal in every championship game this year. I think there will be goals on Sunday. Kilkenny full back line could be slightly maybe vulnerable, although Hugh Lawler's had a brilliant season so far, full back in fairness to him. But there's always someone in All-Ireland's final Sunday that kind of steps up to the plate that mightn't be going well up the years, like Walter Welsh did it in an All-Ireland final. Aidan Fogarty did it for Kilkenny, so it'll be interesting to see. Maybe someone like Niall O'Mara as well could have a big influence for Tip. Does Jake Morris get the nod? Do you go with James Barry or do you go with Seamus Kennedy in defence? There's a lot of things to be weighed up, but it's a great occasion. It's going to be a fantastic occasion, and I suppose a lot of talk during the week was a lot of paying the €90 for the tickets, which is a bit ridiculous. Consider you'd be bringing a €2 shot, still €90. I just don't agree. You know what I mean? But I'm sure the GAA will be nearly hoping for a draw to get another day out of it.
But as I heard, I can't remember who it was. It could have even been you, Gavin. Somebody saying that it's a moment of history, really.
It absolutely
and it's all
is.
part of the atmosphere, and it's
well, look, it's great to be there, and it is a brilliant occasion. You know what I mean? Teams are walking around the parade, and everyone, for the match officials and everyone involved. It's a big occasion as well. And at this stage as well, just want to wish the best of luck as well to Waterford referee Thomas Welch, who's going to be doing fourth official, silent official for the minor final between Kilkenny and Galway. That's the curtain raiser on Sunday, so a big occasion for the Bedeligo man. We wish all involved there the very best of luck. But putting the gun to my head, as you are, Maria, so I'm going to go for Tipperary to win the senior final on Sunday. Locally, and just to go, Stephen O'Brien is clear to play in the All-Ireland football final as well. He had his black card he received against me that was rescinded last night, so I think it's right that these players should be playing on big occasions, so common sense prevailing there, thankfully. Cracking senior football playoff between Clashmore and Kilmac last night in Fairfield. Real end-to-end stuff. It was really nail-biting stuff, and credit both clubs who haven't had a competitive or a game like that, I think, in the football championship for a number of years, and certainly last night both clubs contributed. That Clashmore edged it after extra time 15-111, using their experience, I think their greater experience in the senior grade. Kilmac guilty of 13 wides. Keelan Kearsey was brilliant throughout, missed a penalty for them in extra time, but overall a real excellent battle. Credit both teams. Clashmore prevailing. Second playoff game between Ardmore and Galtier is at 8 p.m. on Sunday in Fairfield, so Ardmore and Galtier, I should say, that's Sunday in Fairfield, so we wish both clubs the best luck in that one. Interesting, Lorna Pork as well at Tomas tonight. He'll have an extensive All-Ireland preview as well, as we will have on tomorrow's On The Ball, so do indeed tune into that as we look forward forward and countdown ahead of the All-Ireland hurling final on Sunday. And in the soccer, locally, Maria, there's a big game at the RSC tonight. Waterford FC and Cork City meeting for the third time this season. They meet in the Electricity League Premier Division. It's a vital local derby. Both sides have been struggling in the league this season. They're on 27 points each on the league table, so I'm sure Waterford will be hoping to perform in front of the home fans this evening. It's underway at 7:45. Matt will be out there as always, of course, to keep us updated. Waterford had a win in the Cup last weekend over Maynooth University Town, so I think that got the confidence back. It was a kind of a handy enough game to kind of ease guys back into it. And both sides have been changed a lot since the last time they met, so I'm expecting a real tough battle as well. It's the start of a busy couple of days for the Blues. Of course, they do make the trip. They're back at home then Monday when they play Shamrock Rovers at 7:45 in the RSC. So I'll be urging all the home fans to get behind the lads tonight. And of course, Tramore continuing out there this evening. The first of 7 off at 5 o'clock this evening. Soft ground, I take it this evening. They had a cracking start to just
soft ground, racing speed from muck up to your knees.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it's always a great occasion. The 4 days you can pay on the gate as well. It's €20 entry fee as well out there for the 7 races, and there's post race entertainment. Did you see the little miniature horse we have?
I
did actually. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah,
Avoca.
Maybe put him out maybe this evening. I would like to get the odds on him, maybe, you know.
What a little cutie.
Exactly. So, and WLR, of course, Ollie and the lads and Cllr are going to be broadcasting live tomorrow from 4 to 7, and of course Sunday is Family Fun Day, and I'm told as well there will be multiple screens to watch the All-Ireland final Sunday as well for Kilkenny and Tipperary. So cracking weekend of sport to look forward to, Maria.
Okay, thank you very much. That is Gavin Whelan, who will be keeping you updated on everything you need to know sports wise over the whole weekend. Thanks for your company this week. Thanks for the nice text there at the end. I do appreciate it. I'm back again in the morning for my own show, The Saturday Cafe, but you enjoy your weekend. Annie Max on the way. Bye bye.